Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked here on the channel. This is the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves, and I don't have a good reason because I didn't think of one before starting this, but I think this might be the last video of phase 1. Today, because I own one book in this series of novellas, we are going to be talking about the Tensorate series. This is The Ascent to Godhood, which is book 4. I read books 1, 2 and 3 via audiobook on Scribd. Regardless of where books come from, nobody's paying me to talk about books except my patrons, and all opinions are my own. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible while still talking about the series as a whole. So if you do want to go into this knowing absolutely nothing, this is not the video for you. Come back when you've read them, we'll talk then. And I will link the story graph for the series down below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. My last disclaimer is that I scripted this video. I don't even know when it was. Maybe a year ago I scripted this, and I haven't reread it because I don't want to do a reread for this right now. That isn't the time. So if some of this seems a bit waffly, that's why I'm going off past Judith's notes and present Judith's somewhat sloppy memory. This is a fantasy novella series. There are some industrial elements, but broadly speaking, we're in the fantasy sphere. There are 4 novellas. I read the first 3 in a bind-up. The audiobooks I definitely recommend, and then I have book 4 separately. I think they started coming out in 2017, so about 6 or 7 years ago. The most recent one, I believe, at the time of scripting this, was The Ascent to Godhood, which was 2019. Neon Yang is a non-binary author who has a previous science background but has written a lot of short stories and a lot of things in a lot of different places. I read their most recent, or at least again at the time of writing this, their most recent full-length novel called The Genesis of Misery, which is a Joan of Arc sci-fi retelling that I enjoyed, but I know some people didn't. I think their writing is a little bit, you have to get into it. It reminds me a lot of Aliette de Bodard's writing in that way. However, we're talking about the Tensorate series. Rather than being a 4-book series that follows the same characters every time, this is very much 4 separate novellas, all of which have a different character they're following, a different theme quite often, and in some cases a different structure. Book 3, I think it is set as a series of reports, so you're getting 4 very different novellas but all in the same world, which is another world where there's very low gravity and monsters are growing. The Protectorate, who are in charge, are the ones who are imposing the might of the military on the people. The Rebellion are known as the Machinists, and so we have the Protectorate, who possess a lot of magic, and the Machinists, who are doing things in a more practical sense. Broadly speaking, there's some combinations between the two. And the first book follows 2 twin children of the Protector, so growing up in that sort of almost royal environment. This series is a fantasy series for sure. It sits very neatly in that fantasy genre, but it does feel very different, and you can see how sci-fi elements are being brought in, historical elements are being brought in. It feels very different. I think that's also helped by the fact that it's a novella. It's a novella format, which in a lot of cases necessitates a slightly different writing style to get through a lot of plot in a short number of pages. And I think also the fact that it is 4 very different novellas helps with that as well. So if you're in a bit of a fantasy rut perhaps, if you're looking for something that feels a little bit new but still falls on a lot of familiar ideas, this might be a series for you. One of the big things that gets explored in book 1 is gender identity. So we're in a world where you are raised gender neutral and then people choose which path they're going to go down. And the exploration of gender between these 2 twins who are brought up to basically be exactly the same, and how that diverges and how their personal feelings about gender get mixed up in their feelings about one another. Really interesting. It happens less in the later books. The later books are not quite so intense in that particular theme, but it's one of the reasons I think someone recommended the book to me, and also why I've recommended it to other people. I think much like Annalee Newitt's, Terraformers, I love a book that explores what a world that has a different attitude towards gender but still has a gender binary of sorts looks like. I thought it was really interesting and a great take, and that's one of the reasons I would suggest reading at least book 1. But in hindsight, I really liked that not all the books were about that, and we weren't just following 4 different people's gender journey. There's much more to do with power and responsibility and government cover-ups. I'm trying to think of another example, like religion as well. Huge themes about religion tackled in these really small books. It's very, very interesting. Frustratingly, book 1 is not the strongest book in the series, which is really annoying when you're trying to get someone to read something and you have to go, just get through the first book, because I think Potentially the first book is also the longest. I've not seen them physically, so I can't remember. But book 4 is only tiny. I think book 3, The Descent of Monsters, was probably my favourite. That's the one that's told as kind of an investigation of a cover-up of a corporate accident, basically. It really hit me because it's really well written. Like, we've seen books that have tried to write in this format and they never quite work, but because something to do with the establishment of the world in the previous books and the fact that it made complete sense for this to be happening, and just the way it was narrated in the audiobook even, just perfect execution, really, really good. So it's a lot to ask to go through book 1 and maybe a little bit book 2 to get to my favourite book, but it's the world that we're in. I find that more so with novella stories, that sometimes, because they're all so different, you have to really power through to get to the one you love. I don't know. Also, if you're planning on picking these up, I would say it is well worth reading them close together in order to get a sense of cohesion. I think I reread The Black Tides of Heaven, book 1, maybe 3 times before I finally managed to get through to book 2. Partly because it's not as good, but also because I was just not realising I needed to jump straight into book 2, and then I'd try and read book 2 and ended up needing a reread but then not managing it, and it was a whole cycle. I would say definitely aim to read them all kind of within a short period of time from each other. I read them 1 a week, I think it ended up being, roughly, and then had a little bit of a gap before I finally managed to read The Ascent to Godhood. But yes, top tip, read them close together to get that sense of cohesion. I have a whole video, in fact I think I might have 2 videos on novellas that I particularly enjoy, so I will link those as opposed to trying to drag them out of my fuzzy memory today. You can check those out if you would like. Do I recommend reading the Tensorate series? It's not one that I would recommend to everyone. It's not my favourite novella series by any means. I will probably end up unhauling The Ascent to Godhood just because I can't really see myself rereading them, or if I did, I would want to do it purely by audiobook because that's the way they worked best for my brain. However, I do think they're really fresh feeling fantasy. I think they are a good thing to have in the mix of your reading if you're thinking about it, and I really like Neon Yang's writing, and I'll be interested to see what comes next from them. Have you read the Tensorate series? Do you have plans to? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I would like to say an enormous, huge, squishy thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams, and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. And whew, we have reached the end of the original quest I'd set out on 4 years ago, to produce a video review for every single book on my shelves. Are we done? Absolutely not. Now we're going back to fill in the gaps of all the books I missed. I hope you're ready. I'll see you next week. It's gonna be some bloopers now. This is The Ascent to Godhood, which is big